So in this game of enlightenment, the whole question is where we park our identity, what we take ourselves to be. And the normal course of things is that we take ourselves to be, well, this, obviously, right? I mean, I can see it, I can touch it, I can sense it from the inside, I can think about it, it has feelings. What could be more real than that? Right? So it feels real. It not only feels real, it feels separate from everything else. There's this here, me, and then there's everything else. The world, other people. That's what it feels like, right? I mean, that's the accepted paradigm. And, almost to question that puts you in the category of, you have to be careful who you say that to. So this whole question of what am I essentially, has to start out with that as, well, this is what everybody believes. This is what it looks like, it feels like, and so this identity starts off being quite convinced that what I am is this. The downside is that these body minds are vulnerable, right? Anybody notice that? I mean, they're subject to physical harm, accidents, illnesses. They're subject, of course, to death. They're also subject to all kinds of psychological hurts, right? At any moment, the next phone call, the next conversation, the next interaction, next bit of news. I mean, there can be just a sense of feeling somehow harmed by life, right? So in a sense, whether it's overt or more subtle, there is this sort of underlying anxiousness about how we go about our lives. And, we spend a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of psychological energy in defense of what we take ourselves to be. My self-image can take a hit at any moment, right? So, we sort of have to be a little protective, on alert, and prepared. And, we can also spend a great deal of energy throughout life sort of building up a solid enough self-image that it can withstand just sort of the day-to-day insults. You work hard enough, you can be successful and have a good career and respect and have a certain degree of wealth, and there's sort of a certain insulation that comes, right? So it's good to acknowledge all of that. That all works on a certain level, but there may come a time in life when we wonder, what about the sort of joy and happiness and peace and contentment that many of us were promised in our youth? If we worked hard, if we got ahead, if we married the right person, if we got the right job, if we got the right house in the right neighborhood, and had the right philosophy, and put all that package together, we'd be happy. That was the promise. And it works sometimes. it works often enough that sort of keeps most of us in the game. Right? It's sort of like Las Vegas. If the slot machines never paid off, nobody would ever play, right? What would be the point? But if it pays off just often enough, then you stay engaged. Intermittent, I think there's a psychological term for that. Intermittent fulfillment, something like that. So it keeps us engaged in this sort of chasing the apparent opportunities in life, right? If I do this, then I'll get to a point when I'll feel like what? Like feel happy, contented. The only problem, and that sometimes happens, again, just often enough to keep us in the game, but what happens over the longer term is that when we reach the goal of our desires, either we get there or we don't. If we don't, we're disappointed. If we do get there, it may feel really good for a while, but then there's a sense of, yeah, but it could have been better, right? Or could have lasted longer, right? And so then we either go further down that road or we back up and pick another path and chase some happiness that we imagine will be down that road. But to go down these sort of trajectories of desire is founded on a sense of there's something lacking in this moment that I know I will feel when that happens at some point in the future. So the question is exactly what's lacking, right? If we knew what was lacking and could find it in this moment, we wouldn't have to spend 20 years sort of polishing our career to get to the feeling that we hoped we were going to get to. We might still do that, but we wouldn't do it with the idea of something's lacking now that I'll find at some future point. That makes sense? So then the question is, what is lacking now that we hope to find at some point in the future? And what I did, what most people do, is pursue things in life, a job, a career, wealth, respect, fame, whatever path you might choose to go down. And if you're lucky, life eventually disappoints. But as long as that carrot's out there, like, no, there's still a possibility. I just haven't gone down that path far enough, and you can see this. Well, it's easier to see in other people, of course, but you can see it in, movie stars or famous singers or politicians. But let's just take a movie star. All the fame, all the adoration, all the wealth, all that they could possibly imagine in this lifetime, and there's still a sense of, yeah, but what about my next movie? Will I maintain that level of, or the singer that thinks, what I need is another relationship, or maybe drugs. Just as much as I've possibly achieved, it's not quite enough, and maybe a little bit more. So there's this trap of more, right? It doesn't, whatever we've sort of achieved up to this point, if it was ultimately fulfilling, that'd be it, right? We'd be done. You know, if we died tomorrow, it's okay. No problem. But that's not what happens, is it? There's the sense of, yeah, but it could be better. You know, and the same, so far we've been just talking about worldly things, but the same movement happens in seeking enlightenment. It's like I had this incredible experience, everything seemed to open up, and it was so clear, and I'm waiting for the next one. So there's this sense of somehow something on the outside, the next experience, next relationship, the next insight, the next aha moment is what will fulfill me. And those moments can be very addictive because they feel really good. They feel really, really good. It's like, life makes sense, I get it. And then the experience fades, and then there's a sense of, how can I get that back? And again, the seeking begins again. So to come back to the original question is about identity. You know, if we're seeking fulfillment in the next experience, the next feeling, the next sort of when all the philosophical pieces fall in line, if we're seeking on the outside in that sense, there'll always be a sense of more or not enough or could be better. And we go on seeking. Whether it's in worldly life or spiritual life, they're not actually two different things, just one life. So the question comes back is, who is doing all this seeking and for what purpose? You know, what is that? And there seems to be this, you know, when we're curious about it or open to it, there seems to be this deep-seated sense of sort of wanting to get to the bottom of it. And that's a different movement than wanting to feel good, right? If our objective is just to feel good, then we're chasing altered states, high states. And those can happen. Again, they don't last as long as we'd like. They're dependent on external circumstances. And like every experience, they have a lifespan. They come and go. And then when they go, we're left back in this, right? So-called ordinary life. This extraordinary experience that we call ordinary life. So the question is, who's doing all the seeking, to what end? I mean, there's some to seek to get from here to somewhere else, some other state, some higher state. The first thing you have to do is to deny the presence of one's, let's just call it, let's say one's essential being, the ground of being, that which is essential. The first thing we have to do to seek it is to deny its presence in this moment. If it was able to be, let's say, accessed in this moment, there'd be no need to seek for it in some future moment. Does that make sense? I mean, if we're looking for something, we have to deny that it's present here. It's sort of like standing on the North Pole and seeking the North Pole, and any step you take in any direction is going to take you further away. So the question is, what's present in this moment? That's sort of fundamental, essential. You know, and we can eliminate things fairly easily. I mean, we can eliminate things like opinions, for example. I mean, we changed our opinions many times over the course of a lifetime. What we believe now is not what we believed when we were 18. So whatever's most fundamental couldn't be subject to sort of redefinition all the time. It needs to be more fundamental than that. You know, we can all have, a fulfilling career, but one day even that will be taken away. We might all have a certain degree of health. Maybe that comes and goes at some point. You know, the body certainly ages. Cells come and go. Storyline changes. Everything that we experience is always in a state of change. You know, Buddha called it impermanence. Yeah. It's not a big surprise, is it? Everything changes. You know, but we spend a great deal of time in our life trying to hang on to the things that we want and trying to avoid the things that we don't want. There's no problem with doing that, except if we believe that I'll be happy if I succeed in doing that, and I won't be happy if I don't succeed. Right? I mean, that's sort of what we take happy and unhappy to be. When things go the way I want, I'm happy. When they don't, tendency is to be unhappy, right? So we think that it has to do with what's happening. When this is happening, I feel good. I'm on board. I'm happy. When that's happening, I don't like it. I'm unhappy. So we think the happiness lies out in circumstances. But I'd suggest it's the other way around. When we're okay with what's happening, we're happy. When we're not okay with what's happening, we're not. So it really comes down to our perspective. If we're okay with what's happening, sometimes it clearly be more enjoyable than other times. It's sort of how life is, yes? But if we're okay with that, if we're okay with things not always going our way, then we don't fall into despair when they're not, and but also we're not excessively elated when they do, right? We can enjoy them, we can be grateful for them, but if we're sort of paying attention, it's like even when we win the lottery, it's like, okay, circumstances happen to fall your way, be grateful. It's not always going to be like that, right? But also when things don't go our way, it's like, okay, I know how this is how life is. Things don't always go. There are 8 billion other people out there, so things don't always go the way I'd like them to go. So this whole idea of happiness, unhappiness, has much more to do with how we are viewing what's happening, our perspective, rather than the circumstances. Of course we prefer this over that, but, we also know that life doesn't work that way. So they're sort of loosening the grip on the steering wheel and let life live. It will anyway. We're not giving anything away. It's not like, in the Bible, not my will, but thy will be done. It's not like it's your will to start with, So it's not like, okay, you win. I'll sort of give up the one card I've got and let life win. It's an acknowledgement, right? It's an acknowledgement of how things are. Life is life, right? And we're manifestations of that life, yes, in this individual body, but is there something more fundamental that is actually already our experience? It's not like this promise of enlightenment is some future distant elevated state. It's actually a recognition of what we already are. And that recognition is what we pointed to at the beginning as that awareness that is present for and knowingly present for whatever's happening. Just that simple, quiet, totally mysterious ability that we all have to be aware of whatever the breath, the bodily sensations, thought processes, feelings. And therefore the actual sensations, perceptions aren't fundamental. What's fundamental is that which is aware of them. And the good news is we're doing that already. We're doing that already. It's how life lives through us already, that awareness enlivens these forms. It is what is aware of whatever sensations are being registered within this body. We think, no, that's not right. It's me. I'm doing it. But if we really step back and see what is always present at all times for everybody, it's this awareness. Our attention may be somewhere else. Our attention may be totally caught up in the TV news, but there's an awareness that's happening. We may not pay any attention to that awareness, but that is what is aware of wherever our attention is directed. So we can stop and wonder whether we've ever experienced anything in our entire life that's been outside of this field of awareness. How would you know? So we can say in a very real sense that our entire life has happened within this field of awareness. All experiences experienced within and by this field of awareness. Big. Vast. Right? big enough to encompass, to experience the entire world. Right? That's the only way we know anything about the world, is this awareness that we all have, already operating. So enlightenment is really the recognition and sort of full body appreciation of the significance of that awareness. Right? It's not an experience. It's not a high state. It may feel good, especially when it's first encountered, because it's such relief from imagining that what I'm limited to is this body-mind that's subject to harm. I recognize that what I truly am is something that's not subject to harm, because it's not of the world of form. Right? So awareness doesn't have the characteristics of form. It doesn't have a shape, a size, a color, a gender, an age. It's just what's aware of all of that. So there's a shift of identity that's possible from believing that what I am is limited to this structure, this physical, mental structure, with all its ideas about, self-doubt, self-limitation, anxiousness, the belief that this is what I am, to the recognition that, yes, this is true, this is the form that awareness is living through that feels like here, but that awareness is not personal. It's just life living, life experiencing itself through this form, looking through these eyes, hearing through these ears. And when the identity shifts to that awareness, rather than being parked in this body as the totality of what I am, then from that awareness, yes, there's still a body. Yes, it can still function. It actually functions better because we don't spend so much psychic energy worrying about, worrying about everything, really. Worrying about what other people think about you, worrying about whether you can do something or you can't, worrying about whether it'll be successful or not, worrying about, should I do this or should I do that? At the end of the day, you'll either do this or you'll do that. Simple. It sort of depends on what we really choose to do. And when we're freed up from all the ideas of what I should do, then that movement flows. It's much more intuitive, much less anxiety ridden. It's just much more of a flow. So the challenging part is we as a separate being can't make that jump into identifying as awareness out of our own effort. And the reason that is the only reason we would do that is because there's a payoff for me, right? I'd feel better if I, got enlightened. So I really want to be that. That's why it doesn't work. What can work is, what am I telling myself that's convincing me that that spacious awareness is not operating now? You know, where am I talking myself into believing my self-doubts, believing everything that the mind tells me? All those little pointers. Criticisms, second guesses, all of that. But we can just investigate, like who exactly is that mind talking to? It's talking. Who's it talking to? But we don't wonder that. We just think, well, that's me thinking. But it's helpful just to get a little daylight from that, and just sort of let the mind do its thing, but just stand back, sort of metaphorically stand back and watch it do it. Watch it sort of do its thinking, whatever it is. You don't actually have to manage it. If you're trying to manage it, you're in the game. You're not in the stadium. You're on the playing field. You know. But if you can just step back and just sort of let it run on, it can be really instructive to see the patterns. You know, all the thoughts that you've thought like 1,000 times. And just see sort of the mechanical nature of that. See the conditioned nature of that. We can ask ourselves the question whether I'm the one thinking those thoughts. We think we are, right? Me thinking. But if you're the one thinking the thoughts, you should be able to control those thoughts, right? If you're the one thinking it, if you can control the thought, you should be able to think what you want to think, not think all those other thoughts that are disturbing. You should be able to turn the mind off if you choose to give it 30 minutes and come back online. If you could control the mind, you could do that. But we imagine that there's thoughts happening, no doubt. Thinking is happening. The only question, is there a personal entity that's doing the thinking? That's the question. We're quite convinced there is. It's just when you go looking for it, it's really, really difficult to find. So we might discover, thinking is happening, but it's not. If you're the one thinking, then you're responsible. You're responsible for every thought. If you're the thinker. And if you go down that road, then your job is to control that whole thought stream. Anybody ever try to do that? A lot of people try to do it when they're meditating. Okay, I'm going to stop thinking. Their thinking may stop sometimes and start thinking again. We've given the thinking mind that authority for so many years. It's not going to stop overnight. But it will subside over time if we're not trying to argue with it. If we're just standing back, noticing what it's doing, seeing that it goes on by itself, not being too impressed when it thinks really intelligent thoughts, and not being too embarrassed when it thinks all those other thoughts. It'll just sort of go on. And when we can really see that, then you can relax about it. We can see that what the mind does. It's very linear. Anybody notice this? It's one. When we're thinking, it's one word after the other. It may be somewhat chaotic. It may be sort of jumbled, not complete sentences, maybe, but it's one word after the other, and all words are concepts, right? I mean, they may point to something real, but the words themselves are concepts at best, about something real. So all of this activity in the mind, I'm not talking about the practical mind that we get paid for when we go to work. I'm talking about when the mind just runs on its own momentum. That kind of thinking is all conceptual. It's at least one step removed from reality. And if we understand that, and if what we are looking for is to find out what is fundamentally true, what's real, what am I really, if that's our goal, rather than just feel good, if our goal is to find out what's true, then we can see that if the mind can only think in concepts, and concepts are removed from reality, then the thinking mind, is not where we will discover that fundamental beingness that we are, that fundamental reality, that essential quality. And even if we can understand the logic of that, it can save us a great deal of time, because we're not chasing philosophies, we're not chasing ideas. We can get right to the heart of the matter to see, okay, here, I've got a front row seat on reality. I'm living this life. I'm here now. I may not know what that is yet, may never know, but I know that I'm here now and there's something present. And that's the doorway, is just to stay with that very simple inquiry about what is that? Everything else, even, inquiring about my psychology may be interesting, but it won't get us to the fundamental question of what am I really? That's not a conceptual question, and it won't ever be answered conceptually. It's just, if what we are is the essence of life, let's say, it's not a concept. Life's not a concept. So that deepest reality can be experienced. We are it already. We don't have to improve our way to get there. We don't have to fix anything. And the idea of fixing something is like, well, I can't deal with that reality now because I have to fix this. It may take me, the rest of my life, but then, so it's a postponement, right? postponement of a recognition of what we are already unavoidably. But we think, well, that can't be true. Not like this. I've got to fix things. I could clean up my diet, and get rid of those kind of thoughts, and get rid of those habits and eat the right food. But that's just all the mind saying, thinking that this awakeness business works like everything else in life. Like we have to work hard to succeed, to become something in order to be happy at some distant point in our life. And what we're talking about is recognizing that which is already at peace, already content, already done, right? Already fully as is. Right? It's not a self-improvement game. We don't have to be successful as, adults. It's not required. Some people do it within religion, some people do it without. Also, it's whatever works, right? Whatever life circumstances causes us, pushes us into a corner where we have no alternative but to recognize what's always and already the case. And our job is to pay attention to what's happening, especially within our own head. Be honest. Self-honesty I'm talking about. Be honest about what we know and what we don't know. Be willing to let go of any preconceived ideas about how everything works. And find out what's true. What's true we can't discard too much, right? What's true can't be discarded. We're talking about self-identity now in terms of discarding things, not necessary to give your house away or anything, but just see what ways we identify ourselves, and be willing to see that on a relative level. Sure, yeah, okay. That's what we look like. That's what we're good at doing. That's what our preferences are. Fine, no problem. But if we're looking to see what's fundamentally true, then we can see all of that is on a relatively superficial basis. And what's fundamentally true is this amazing, mysterious, but totally present and something that can be experienced, this capacity of being knowingly present for whatever's happening. And then when the identity shifts to that spacious, sort of empty, awake quality, then yes, life still goes on. Yeah. Sometimes enjoyable things happen, sometimes difficult things happen, but from the perspective of this awake presence, all of that happens within a much, much bigger space.